I won millions in the lottery, but here's the twist. I haven't told my girlfriend. Now that we're talking marriage, I have no idea how to break the news, or if it's already too late. In late 2021, I had a rather large Euro Millions lottery win. I used some of the money to buy things like my house and current car outright, gave money to family and friends, and have the rest invested, giving me a significant yearly return, meaning I'll never need to work again. Mid-2022, I met Emma, fake name. While I was dating around at this time, I obviously didn't want to disclose my win, and when asked why I didn't work, I would give a vague reason of that I was a computer programmer, which was true, who developed a tool used in online banking, which had been licensed, as this tended to be boring enough to not get any follow-up questions. Emma accepted this answer at the time, and never really followed up. Emma has her own management job, earning around $70K, and has never asked me for money. I only mention this to avoid any "she's using you" responses. She is the love of my life, and in the last couple of months, the topic of marriage has come up. Emma has already said that she is willing to sign a some-of-sort prenuptial agreement. I am currently in conversations with my lawyer about what this would involve, not looking for legal advice. She is obviously aware that I have money, but I have no idea of how to broach the subject of how much, and that it came from a lottery win. I obviously don't want to start a marriage based on a lie, and while our current finances are largely separate after marriage, I don't think I would be able to hide my financial worth. Any advice on how to tell her and how to rebuild trust would be appreciated. Edit. Thanks to the most of you that supplied thoughtful responses. Just to clear common questions up, I honestly have zero regrets about not disclosing my win when we started dating. Obviously, at the time, I had no idea that it would become so serious, and generally did everything I could so few people as possible knew. I am not trying to trick her into signing anything. Any prenuptial agreement will be handled by a lawyer, and I have zero worries that anything they advise will be incorrect or not legally binding. My passive income is more than enough for us both, and any children we may have to live very comfortably indefinitely. My partner enjoys her field of work, and I suspect that she may wish to continue working or volunteering in some capacity, but if she wished to stop working and live off me, I would be perfectly okay with that. Update 1. So, things have gotten intense recently, and I've realized that maybe I've been walking a fine line here. Emma and I have been talking more and more about our future, and she's been pushing me to share my thoughts on big stuff like savings, retirement, and long-term goals together. Honestly, these are the types of questions that would be normal for anyone planning a serious future, but for me, they've become way more loaded. Emma has no idea that I have this hidden pot of lottery gold. And yeah, it's starting to feel like a massive elephant in the room. I tried sidestepping the questions like I have in the past. I gave her a vague answer about wanting to save and be financially responsible, hoping that would be enough. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Emma's no fool, and if I keep dodging, she's going to start seeing right through me. I mean, she already suspects there's more going on than I'm letting on. This time, she looked at me for a solid few seconds, almost like she was waiting for me to just spill it already. But when I didn't, she moved on, maybe because she's still trusting that I'd tell her anything big. The problem is, at this point, it is big. Way bigger than it would have been if I'd told her earlier. The thing is, I've been keeping this a secret for so long that now, the idea of telling her about my lottery win feels like I'm flipping the script on her. I mean, imagine finding out your partner has been sitting on this kind of news since day one. Even if I tell her now, I'm pretty sure it would feel like I'd been hiding a massive part of my life, and honestly, she'd be right. It was easy to keep things under wraps when we first started dating because I didn't expect it to get this serious. I figured I'd never have to explain the weird work cover story or the fact that I could basically retire at 35 if I wanted. But here we are, talking about marriage, and the weight of this secret is getting heavier by the day. I'll be honest, part of me wonders if I can just ride this out. It's not like I've been lying about everything. I really was a software developer, and my investments are solid enough that we'd be set for life regardless. But there's no denying that the lottery win was what made everything possible, and I know she's going to see that as a huge piece of information that I hid. And it's not even just about the money. It's about trust, honesty, and the fact that I'm deliberately keeping something this big from her. If the tables were turned, I can't say I wouldn't be hurt or even angry if she'd done the same thing to me. To add to the complexity, Emma's been amazing. She's never once asked me for money or hinted at being with me for any financial gain. She's got her own successful career, and she's incredibly self-sufficient. We've talked about finances in a general sense, but it's always been in the context of how we'd handle things together as a team, splitting expenses, or managing future goals. She's not a gold digger or someone looking for a handout, far from it. And maybe that's what's making this harder. She deserves the truth, especially if we're talking about a future together. But the longer I hold off, the more I risk her seeing this as a betrayal. So here I am, stuck between two equally terrible options. I could just come clean and hope she doesn't see it as a reason to question everything, or I could keep dodging and risk losing her trust completely down the line. Honestly, I'm leaning towards telling her. But how do you even begin that conversation? Hey, remember when I said I was a programmer? Well, that's true. But also, I won millions in the lottery, and I didn't think it was important to tell you until now. That doesn't exactly sound great. The other day, she even mentioned that it's weird I don't seem stressed about money, considering I'm supposedly living off investments alone. She's sharp, and it's only a matter of time before she starts poking at the story more seriously. I've thought about different ways to ease into it, like mentioning that I had a lucky break that allowed me to invest more aggressively. But that still feels like downplaying something major. Plus, once I tell her, there's no way to take it back. She'll know I was hiding this since day one, and I can't imagine that's going to sit well with her. And then there's the prenup. She was totally fine with the idea of signing one, even brought it up herself when we started talking about marriage. I know she respects the idea of protecting each other's assets, but she agreed to that without knowing the full extent of what she'd be agreeing to. That just adds another layer to the trust issue. I don't want her to feel like I'm tricking her into signing something under false pretenses. And the prenup itself, I'm not even sure how to bring it up now. My lawyer suggested getting everything in order and being transparent about my finances, which is great advice if I'd been honest from the start. But now, every step I take feels like it's either going to expose me or make it look like I'm trying to cover my tracks. If I go through with the prenup without telling her everything, she might see it as me protecting my winnings specifically from her, which couldn't be further from the truth. And if I tell her, I might be blowing up a perfectly good relationship for nothing. It's a lose-lose. So, Reddit, I'm stuck. How do I bring this up without sounding like a con artist who's been playing the long game? I don't want to lose Emma, and I don't want to start our marriage on shaky ground. But it's feeling like there's no easy way out here. Do I just rip the Band-Aid off and tell her everything, hoping she sees why I waited? Or do I keep riding this out, hoping it doesn't blow up in my face? I know I should have been upfront from the beginning, but at this point, I just want to make things right. Any advice on how to come clean without losing her trust completely would be much appreciated. Update 2. Alright, so after a lot of debating with myself and reading through your advice, I decided it was time to come clean to Emma. Honestly, I was kind of terrified. My heart was pounding the entire time. I mean, what do you even say to explain why you've been hiding a huge part of your life for almost 2 years? I knew I had to make it sound like more than, oh hey, I've got millions and just didn't feel like sharing. So, I planned out the entire conversation in my head, hoping it would go smoothly. Spoiler alert, it didn't. We were having dinner when I decided to bring it up. I started off by talking about how much I love and trust her and how serious I am about our future. But before I could get to the lottery part, Emma interrupted me. She said she'd actually been feeling like I'd been holding something back lately. She was right, of course, but hearing her say it just made me realize how close I was to losing her trust entirely. So, instead of dragging it out, I just went for it. I told her I'd had a huge financial windfall a couple of years back. I explained that it wasn't from some business deal like I'd hinted, but from a lottery win. I waited for her reaction, expecting shock, anger, something dramatic. But honestly, she just sat there, staring at me in silence. I can't even explain the expression on her face. It was a mix of surprise and hurt. She asked me how much it was, and when I told her, she went quiet again. I think it was really setting in for her just how big of a secret this was. Eventually, she looked at me and asked why I hadn't told her sooner, and that's where things got messy. I tried to explain that at the beginning, I didn't know how serious we would get, and I didn't want her to feel pressured or see me differently because of my money. But as I was explaining, I could see her getting more and more upset. I could tell she felt like I hadn't trusted her enough to share something so significant, even after we got serious. And honestly, seeing her like that was brutal. She asked if there was anything else I was hiding, and the way she said it really stung. It made me realize that she might be questioning everything now, wondering if I'm keeping more secrets. I tried to reassure her that this was the only thing, but I could see the damage had already been done. Emma's smart. She even brought up the prenup, asking if I'd planned on having her sign it without fully understanding my financial situation. I tried to tell her that I'd always intended to be transparent before she signed anything, but I could tell she wasn't convinced. In her mind, I think it came across like I was just trying to cover my own interests. After a bit, she said she needed time to process everything and went to bed early. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept replaying the conversation, thinking of how I could have handled it better. The truth is, I'm not sure if there was a better way at this point. I probably should have told her way earlier, but now that it's out there, I feel like I've shattered the trust we built. The next morning, she was polite but distant. She didn't bring up the conversation, and honestly, it felt like there was a wall between us that hadn't been there before. Update 3. After our initial talk, Emma took a few days to herself. We didn't have any big conversations, just the usual small talk, and she didn't bring up the lottery or the prenup once. The silence was killing me, but I figured pushing her to talk would only make things worse, so I gave her the space she clearly needed. When she finally sat me down to talk again, I was honestly expecting her to say she couldn't get past the secrecy and that she needed a break. But it turns out, she had a lot more to say than I'd realized. Emma opened up by saying she wasn't so much upset about the money itself, but about what it represented. For her, the idea that I could keep something this big hidden made her question if I trusted her at all. She told me she's always valued honesty and transparency above everything in a relationship, and the fact that I'd kept such a huge part of myself hidden had left her feeling like she was missing out on an important piece of our connection. Hearing that hit hard because, in my mind, the money was just a detail, but for her, it symbolized so much more. The turning point, though, was when she explained how this has shaken her view of us as a team. Emma has always been the kind of person who loves building things together. She's passionate about her career, her goals, her independence. She said that if we were going to spend our lives together, she needed to feel like we were fully in it together, no secrets, no half-truths. She even mentioned that she'd been talking to her sister about it, trying to understand why it bothered her so much, and it came down to this feeling that she'd been shut out from something major in my life. I told her about my intentions behind keeping the secret, how I never wanted her to feel overwhelmed or pressured, and that I wanted us to grow as a couple without money being a factor. But she pointed out something I hadn't even considered, that by hiding the truth, I'd unintentionally put money at the center of everything by making it this big secret. I hadn't realized that in my effort to make things simple, I'd actually created a massive barrier between us. Then she threw me a curveball. Emma suggested we see a counselor or therapist together to help rebuild the trust that's been damaged. She admitted that she's willing to work through this if I am, but she needs help making sense of her own feelings now that everything's out in the open. Honestly, I hadn't expected her to want to work things out like that. I felt relieved and a little guilty at the same time, realizing she was willing to put in the effort to fix what I'd messed up. We agreed to look into counseling, and for the first time since the confession, I actually felt hopeful that we could move forward. But before we wrapped up the conversation, she had one more thing to say. Emma told me that while she understands why I kept things hidden initially, she's not going to settle for half-truths or vague answers going forward. She wants full honesty from now on, even if the truth is messy or uncomfortable. And I get it. This whole experience has shown me how damaging it can be to keep things under wraps, no matter how good the intentions. As we sat there, she asked me directly if there was anything else I hadn't told her, any other big secrets I'd kept. And for the first time in a while, I felt totally clear-headed as I told her that no, the lottery win was the only thing I'd hidden. I could see the relief on her face, but I could also tell that it's going to take time for her to really trust that answer. I get it. I've put her in a tough position, and I know I'm going to have to prove myself with my actions from here on out. Since we agreed to start therapy, things have been a bit better between us, more open, even if there's still a hint of tension. We're working through it, and I'm hopeful. This whole situation has made me rethink what it means to build a life together, and that means more than just sharing our time. It means sharing everything, even the parts that feel awkward or uncomfortable. I can't take back the time I kept the secret, but I can make sure that moving forward, she gets the full version of me. So, I'm committed to doing whatever it takes to rebuild the trust. We're both in this with the intention of making things work, and if that means unpacking uncomfortable feelings, so be it. Emma has shown me that she's more than willing to stand by me, even when things get complicated, and for that, I'm more grateful than ever.